that's the main gist of credit cards. So the cons here are, you are trying to use a credit card to build. Hello and thanks for joining me on Zulf Talks. This is the shizzle they don't teach you in school. We're going to look at how can credit cards actually help you. Should you have one? Let's look at the basics before we get into the topic. What is a credit card? So you got a credit card. If you have a bank account, you'll know what I mean. If you're under 18, 16, you might be able to apply for like a bank card depending on where you are in the world. But a credit card is simply money that you're borrowing from someone else to buy what you want now. So like example, let's give you an example. So if I was to say I wanted a TV, that is my TV. It's a bit small. Shall we go? Because it's not, well, this is what a lot of people will think. It's not my money, I'm borrowing the money, might as well get a really massive TV. So what they end up doing is going, you know, proper massive. So that costs money, depending on where you are and what money it is. So that is going to be your TV. You go into the shop, you go online, you want to buy that, they're going to ask you for that money. Your credit card, if you have one, can pay for that. So you have a credit card, and that money gets put onto your credit card. So that TV becomes yours, but that money goes onto the credit card, and then you're gonna have to pay a monthly amount towards that balance. So what that means is, in that cost, say 2, you can pay like, that's meant to be like a half of that kind of, and you're gonna pay that over like however long you want to pay. However, if you don't pay it off instantly, 30 days, normally a month, they apply interest on a rolling basis. What's interest? Interest is, because you borrowed the money, you need to pay me a bit extra. So you could pay back, let's use a monetary example. So say for example, that one there was $1,000 or pounds or whatever you want to call it. That has been put onto your credit card. So you've got 1,000 over here. If you pay it off straight away, you pay 1,000. But if you don't pay it off straight away, that will get broken down to smaller amounts, which you pay each month. Like think of it like basically a credit. So you're going to pay that money back as a small amount. So what would that come out to? You're probably looking at like 50-ish pounds, $50-ish minimum. So what they do on that minimum payment is they charge you for paying back what you borrowed. However, because they offered you the money, you're going to also pay towards them lending you the money, which is referred to an interest. So we're going to look at the more deeper version of this. That's an overview. That's basically a credit card, but there's more good things and bad things that you need to keep an eye out on. So if you're totally new to credit cards, should you get a credit card? We can have a look at that now and see, should you apply for a credit card? What's the purpose of it? Do you need one? I think you can use it to your advantage, providing you're looking after your money, like we talked about in the other episode. So I'll link you to the playlist here that links back to savings, how you're spending your money, the things you're currently already paying for on credit. You might already have credit cards, you might already have loans. That's going to cover that. But let's get back to the apply section. To be able to get a credit card, they need to do a search on you. So they're going to ask you some information. You go through an application, they do a search for your application, and they do something like a credit search, which is basically a search on your credit history. How good are you at paying back your money? Have you ever had any late payments? Have you not paid money back? Have you closed credit cards off and been bankrupt, for example? So that credit search is basically like call it a Google search on you with all the companies that currently provide you with credit. But that can also be things like your phone bill, your house bills, and even other money that you've borrowed in terms of like student loans, things like that. They all show up on that, how you're paying back and how much you've got outstanding credit. Some of it goes onto your pay slips, but there's different ways of looking at that. So if everything is okay, the credit search comes back and say, yes, this is an okay customer, we'll give him a credit card, and they'll give you a balance depending on your wages and how much money you've got, free money. So say for example, they've given you a credit card, that's our credit card, and they've said, okay, this guy's not got as much money, he only works part-time, so we're going to give him a limit of say $500, pounds, whatever you are in the world. So now I've got a credit card with $500 pounds. In the credit search, they discovered that actually, you know what, I don't always pay back my money on time. There's been a few delayed payments. So they'll give me a higher interest rate. So for borrowing that money, they give you a limit of 500. However, there's some strict guidelines around that as well. We'll cover that in like the cons of a credit card. So once you've got your credit card, you're going to have £500 limit on there, and they give you an interest rate of 21%, for example, which is quite high. But there's cards out there with 27% depending on your credit rate. So what's this? We talked about interest rates before, so we'll link you up here, so make sure you check out the full playlist and you'll see the interest rates and what we mean by that, how it affects you. So that's, to recap, it's basically how much interest you pay on that £500. That's basically it. So with that, now you've got an application, you've done a credit search. When they do a credit search, it gives a little tally on the search saying you have done a search for credit. So if you apply for a mortgage or anything else, they all see that little tally mark that this guy's recently been applying for a new bank account, a new credit card, a new mobile phone contract. All these things show up there. So that's held at the credit reference agencies. We also did a bit about what they are and what they do, so you can check that out. Now we've got a credit search, we've been given a limit of 500, we've got 27%. So let's go back to that example that we were looking at for the TV. The TV was $1,000, so we can't buy that on this 500 limit unless we had some savings we can go into. You will need to pay back a monthly amount towards that, which is like a minimum payment. The best way to do that is they ask you to set up a direct debit. So each month when you use money on this card, an amount is paid from your bank account. Hopefully you've got the money to cover it, which is the first point. If you're going to get a credit card, make sure you've always got the amount on the credit card in your bank, which you can pay back, because that's where people go down the slope where they borrow money they don't have and they get into credit, and that's where things get worse, which we'll cover in the cons of why you don't want a credit card. But that's how you apply for one. That gives you an idea of that. Next up, we're going to look at, once you applied, what's the pros? How can you use it to your advantage? So why should you apply for a credit card? If you're new into borrowing money, say for example, let's use an example. Say you've got a kid called Cash, and then we've got another kid called Bash. I won't put dollar signs on Bash because Cash has got the money, he thinks. We'll find out if he's right or not. So why should we apply? Let's say for example they've left school, college, they're currently new, they've got a simple bank account, so they've got one account with a bank, not credit. They both have one there, so we both have an account. We'll depict that by a blue with the whatever that is. So that's their bank account. Now say for example Cash wants to go out and buy some stuff. He can go and use his bank card to buy what he needs to buy. So let's go and see if he buys, I don't know, what's he buy? A new bike. Oh, that's going to be testing me. Can I draw a bike? Look at that sick electric bike, you know, pedal power. And he spends, I don't know, 300 on that bike. He's got a bank account and he's spending cash because he thinks he's, you know, he's got the moolah. Bash over here, he thought, you know what, I'm going to spend 300, but I've got, say for example, 600 in my bank account. But Bash is thinking into the future. Bash wants to build up his credit score. There is such a thing as credit score. I covered that in another episode about credit, where he wants to be able to have, call it like social media presence for credit searching. So if someone searches your name, what comes up on social media? A lot of people will be like, okay, this person's like this based on his searches. He's got an Instagram, he's got a TikTok, he puts loads of pictures up. But when finance companies do a search on your name in the credit reference agency, like a Google search, kind of, you know, in inverted commas, that helps them know what kind of person you are. So what Bash does, he applies for a credit card. And when he applies for a credit card, he only has a bank account. So when he applied, they did a search on him. They think, oh, okay, he's got a bank account. He's new into the arena. Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a small credit limit on a card. And let's give him a high interest rate because we don't know what he's like yet. So they'll make money from you, the credit card companies. So they give him a credit card, which looks like that. And they've decided to give him a £200 limit as a new beginner person. That is quite low in the grand scheme of things. Current cards out there can give you things like £5,000, £6,000 limits, depending on your reference agency, your credit history. So he's got a card at £200. So he decided to buy a bike, again, on his credit card. And that credit card also gave him cash back. So it gives you like a benefit of, you know what, if you spend money with us, every month we'll give you a percentage of that back as cash or perks where you can buy free stuff at our shop, for example. So he bought a bike. Firstly, because he had a £200 limit, he thought, you know what, I've got £600 in my bank, I'll spend 200 of it on the card to benefit from the cashback, and the remaining 100 I'll put into from my bank account. So he made 2 payments. That meant that he was building credit history in 2 different places. He was building his credit history with the bank he uses, his bank account there, and with the credit card. So there was a transaction, a tick saying this person spent £200 on his credit card and £100 here, which totals 300 for the bike, which you can't really see there, but you get what I mean. Now that means the credit reference, you can look at it like months and numbers like that. So it'd be like a little tick there that he spent and he's got a balance with us. But Bash, being the clever little sod that he is, he paid that credit card off in full from his bank account because he had the money sitting there, which meant at the end of that month he paid this £200, which then made his balance here 0 and his balance on his bank 300. So all he's done there is he's been a bit clever with how he's spending the money. Instead of spending it in the bank itself, he made it via the credit card to build up a history with the credit. Now the credit card company's like, you know what, this customer borrowed some money and then they paid it back, so now we give him a bit better credit rating. That's not exactly how it works. They ideally want you to have late payments so they can make interest from you and make money from you. Because working from a credit card company in the past, I can tell you that these customers that pay their balance off in full make the bank no money at all. It's the people that have default payments, late payments, and struggle with their payments that make the companies money. So Bash, being the clever guy he is, he's taking full benefit of that, because in future, as he continues on this journey, in a year's time, he can ask the credit card company for a limit increase, because they look back and this guy regularly spends a lot of money with us, let's give him a little increase, and they make his 200 limit into like 1,000 maybe, and he continues on this journey. Then he gets to an age where he started working and he's gonna get a house and he gets a mortgage. The mortgage company will do a search on him and see a lot more history here with Bash than with Cash, because Cash over here was spending money right in his bank account. He's only got one account, so they're like, oh, what is he like with credit? If you borrow him money, will he pay you back? What is he like? So in the long run, Cash is not going to be better off, but Bash will be better off, which is why an overview of credit cards can help you in the long run to build up a history that otherwise would not be there. So you're basically building up a reputation. That's why a card can be used, and the benefit there was they got a bit of cash back while using a credit card, providing you use it in the right way and you're good with your money, so you're not leaving money on the credit card. What's the cons of a credit card? So in this exact same example, let's look at the cons if it didn't go as planned. Why are credit cards bad? Why have a lot of people struggled with them? It's a mixture of things out there. Education, like a lot of companies will just give you a credit card and here's some money to spend, but they won't necessarily tell you why you should use it, why you shouldn't use it, and where it's bad for. So hopefully this gives you a bit of information on your journey so you can kind of see why you can use it to your advantage, but at the same time it can cause a lot of problems for a lot of people. So we're going to go into this one now. Cons. We'll use the same example that I had before. So we've got Cash with the dollar signs as his cash, his number plate with the cash of the high-end finance car, that guy. And we've got Bash, who's a bit more clever with his money. He's got bank account, he's got account and a credit card. So he's got 2 ways of getting access to money. This guy's only got one access to his bank account. So the cons here would be credit cards have interest rates, which, let's say this credit card here is a £200 limit and that interest rate is 21%. If you're not planning to pay off that credit card every month, they'll apply interest to your account on a monthly account, so you'll get interest mounting up. So that £200 will no longer be £200. They'll add interest onto that, which makes the balance higher and higher each month, meaning you've got more to pay back. Layman's kind of basic explanation. So Bash, being clever, never leaves money on his credit card ongoing. So if he's got the money in his account, if he's got £200, he would rather pay the credit card and make that a 0, because ultimately he's saving, paying the interest rate 21%. So it's kind of a movement of money. You'll notice a lot of things in finance is basically doing things in a clever way to avoid you having to pay money. That's with interest rates, it's with money, it's with bank accounts, it's building up credit history. It's like doing it, it's being like streetwise. If you live on the street, you know where to go, where not to go, where to be careful. It's basically that same logic applied to money and finance. Hopefully that explains it a bit more. So Cash was using his money from his bank account. He only ever used what money he had in there. The cons of that is he's got one account, not building up much history with how good he is with credit. So he's not showing the world or other companies that he would in future need. Because if you're living in the current world with finance, you will in future need access to loans, credit cards, money, mortgages. It's only so much you can do with your own bank account. A lot of people do it. They just use their bank account for everything. However, when it comes to a time of need, they don't have as much help as they could potentially have if they're making use of the finance credit availability. So it's all a mix of making the right choice with what you've got. And also in the cons, Cash is a bit more secure that he's using what he's got. Whereas Bash could get into the kind of arena where credit card companies like to push people. You've got money in your bank account and you're like, oh, you know what, I've used the money in my bank account and I've got credit card with £200 on. How about this month, even though I don't have the money in my bank account, I've used it all up, why don't I spend a bit of money on my credit card? And that's where it all starts. You start spending money on the credit card. You've not got money to pay that credit card back. You're in this loophole of 21%. So that balance gets higher. Your limit is 200. You've spent 200. End of that month, they'll apply the interest onto it, which then sends you over your limit because your limit was 200. Interest has gone on, you're on at £221, for example, and that's taking you over. What do? They'll whack you with the over limit fee because you've gone over the set limit they've said you can spend on that card. So they'll add more money onto it. So that 200 becomes 221 with the interest. They'll add another $40 on there. So it becomes 261. And then you've got default payment because you won't be able to make the payment because you don't have money in your bank account. Say for example you lost your job or you were getting money coming through regularly, but that month it didn't come through and it was delayed. So that month you not only got your interest rate, the over limit fee, you'd also get a late payment fee, which is another amount on top of that. So easily you'll find yourself owing 300 on a spend of 200, and that's where it starts. If you're used to getting £200 in your bank, next month you missed it, you've got £300 to pay, your £200 comes in your bank, you've paid that to the balance, you've still got £100 outstanding, which is basically the fees, the interest over limit fees, and you only got £100 to spend, which is back into the credit card again. So that's the cons of it. You can easily go down the slope of credit and finance. However, if you've always got 2 or 3 times your credit limit in your bank, always use money you've got. Try not to use money that you know you don't have. That's the main gist of credit cards. So the cons here are you are trying to use the credit card to build up your credit history, but that here has just caused you a couple of default marks for A, not paying back on time, 2, going over your overdraft limit, and then 3, potential further adverse effects on your credit history. So in summary, should you get a credit card? There's pros, there's cons. If you use it in the right way, yes, you should definitely get it. It helps you build up your credit history. You can use it in the correct way, like I said earlier, to summarize: buy something, pay it off in full with a direct debit on your next payment due date. Set up a direct debit. You can actually select to pay off the full balance each month, and don't spend more than what you've currently got in your bank. And the credit card can be a great way to build up history towards getting more money, for example a loan or a mortgage when you're buying a house. I talk more about that right here, so go on to that video and let's talk about mortgages and loans.